Hi, and a very, very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the highly anticipated The Value of Immersive Experiences Unveiled IMDA webinar. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Wednesday afternoon to be together with us. I'm sure you will glean many insights into these immersive experiences as well as the metaverse throughout this entire session. So once again, thank you for taking time out of your precious schedule. And before the webinar starts, just a couple of house rules just to keep today's session running as smoothly as possible. Number one, please be informed that this webinar will be recorded later and that our microphones will automatically be set on mute throughout this session to avoid any unnecessary disruption. Now, I'll also like to introduce you to two different functions on Zoom here, which we'll be using throughout the webinar. Number one will be the Zoom Q&A function. So please direct any questions that you might have to the speakers via the Zoom Q&A function. For the Zoom chat is actually reserved for the technical issues. So if you do encounter any technical issues where you face any challenges connecting to the audio or the picture, please feel free to reach out to our technical team via the Zoom chat function. But for any questions of the speakers, we encourage you to raise any questions that you might have through the Zoom Q&A function. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Now, of course, if you're also interested in future events and webinars similar to this hosted by IMDA, and for the record, they do have many, many engaging events for you to glean many, many insights. You may actually visit their website, LinkedIn, and mailing list, most importantly, which you can join via the QR code on screen right over here. So we're just going to leave it on for 1 minute or two, just for you to scan the QR code and join our mailing list. For the record, looking at the Pixel calendar for next month, there are actually a lot of different events that you can partake in, including Pixel's AR VR workshop, Pixel's design thinking workshop, where we invite the best in the industry to share the best practices and the possibilities for you and your enterprise as well. So feel free to scan this QR code, or maybe at the moment, if you're not really convenient to scan this, you can actually just screenshot this and scan this and join the mailing list later on as well. Now, before we begin, right, I would just like to run through today's program briefly. We have two speakers with us today, and they are namely from Deloitte Center for the Edge Southeast Asia. We have Ecosystem and Partnership Lead, Ms. Michelle Tan, and she'll be speaking about this metaverse as the next internet, unlocking economic opportunities and revolutionizing sectors. I'm sure Deloitte needs no introduction as one of the world-leading firm for professional services, consulting, audit, and you name it. But for the Center for the Edge, they're actually a very, very unique arm that peers over the edges of emerging technologies, innovative startups, as well as business models, alternative cultures, and mavericks, and develop frameworks and insights on how these edges will change and shape the world. So today, Michelle will be talking about metaverse as the next internet. And of course, also we do have the co-founder and CEO of Immersive Technologies company, actually, Mr. Warren Woon. So Warren later will be talking about, can the metaverse help reverse climate change? And I think that is really, truly a very interesting topic, because when we talk about the metaverse world, some of us might think that there is actually a disconnect between the metaverse and the physical world. But Warren and his team are actually great at connecting the two, creating very, very interesting phygital products. So a blend of both worlds and connecting the entire experiences. We'll leave Warren to speak more about that later, and feel free to raise any questions later on. So we shall have the speakers speak first, and then after each speech, we will actually have a Q&A session, but feel free to raise any questions that you have at any point in time, and it will not disrupt the stream because it will just float up on the Q&A platform. So thank you very much. And of course, we do hope that you enjoy this webinar altogether with us and glean some really great insights here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're all ready to start. Once again, a very warm welcome to all of you for our highly anticipated webinar on the value of immersive experiences unveiled. My name is Ching Hong, and I have the honor of serving as both the host and facilitator for today's event. So once again, for anyone who have just joined us, just please be informed that this webinar will be recorded and that your microphones will automatically be set on mute throughout this session. You most definitely welcome questions through the Q&A platform. And should you encounter any technical issues, once again, please reach out to our team via the Zoom chat function. Now, we have an exciting and insightful program lined up for you, filled with thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and valuable information. So Now, let's dive into the details for our program for today. Now, first up, we have Ms. Michelle Tan, who is the Ecosystem and Partnership Lead at Deloitte's Center for the Edge Southeast Asia, who will be sharing on metaverse as the next internet and unlocking economic opportunities and revolutionizing sectors. So with that, let us welcome Michelle, our first speaker of today. Michelle, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ting Hong. Thanks, great introduction for Center for the Edge. So today, one second. Yeah, so today we'll be sharing about the emerging trends in AI and the immersive internet. So as Ting Hong mentioned, I'm from Deloitte Center for the Edge. So he gave a really great introduction of what we do. So people know Deloitte a lot as a consulting firm, as an audit firm, but Deloitte Center for the Edge, we are the futures think tank for Deloitte. So for many business leaders like yourself that I believe are on the call today, you might be thinking about what keeps you up at night all the time, your profit losses. But what Center for the Edge tries to do is to help you think about what should be keeping you up at night. So how we do that is to help you think through what's on the edge of technology, markets, geographies, demographics, because those are the things that would really affect what your businesses look like in the coming years. So how we do that is through a future-back perspective called the Zoom Out, Zoom In framework. So we look out into the next 10 to 20 years, help you envision what that future looks like, such as in webinars like that, where we share about our view of the future, help you focus on what you need in order to be successful in that future. So imagining what your place would be in that future. And then after that, we zoom back into 6 to 12 months and help you think through what are things you might want to do to shape your businesses towards that future that you envision, and how can you mobilize resources in order to take action for that. So very broadly, that is what Center for the Edge does. So one of the edges that we cover is the next internet. So many of you came for this presentation with the understanding of me presenting something about the metaverse, but even more broadly, I will be covering the metaverse as part of the next version of the internet that we envision to become more immersive, instantaneous, and intelligent. So these words might mean something to you, might not mean something to you, but I will flesh them out over the next 20 minutes so that you can understand it a bit better and what that looks like. So firstly, what I'll be covering is what innovation looks like in the age of AI. So I'm pretty sure that most people in this webinar right now have heard of ChatGPT over the last couple of months, but not everyone might have tried it. So because this is a webinar format, I figured it might be easier for me to just share certain points of views that we have about ChatGPT. So I very quickly went to ChatGPT when I was given the invitation for this webinar. And I told them, I'm delivering a presentation on the value of immersive experiences unveiled. What would my audience want to know? And within 5 seconds, it gives me a fantastic answer. It tells me that my audience might want to know more about what immersive experiences looks like, case studies, benefits and value add, what are some of the future trends, and also have time for Q&A. So I'm pretty sure these are some of the questions that are already on your mind as we dive into this webinar. But the great thing about ChatGPT is that you can have a continuation of a conversation with them. So what I did was to ask, what kind of audiences do you anticipate will attend this webinar? Because at that point, we hadn't got the list yet. So what ChatGPT gave was this list of professionals that they anticipate would be there, such as industry professionals, educators, healthcare professionals, marketing, investors, and the general public with a tech interest. So I believe that everyone on this webinar right now would probably fall into one of the 6 categories. And that just very quickly shows how ChatGPT can do the things that they do. And if we talked about what the internet looked like a year ago, we could do none of these things. We could go to Google, search for information, but the internet wasn't able to come up with critical information like that, or be able to understand what certain knowledge means in the context that you're referring to. So that's what we mean by the next internet is about to become a lot more intelligent. And with ChatGPT, the way that it has gained traction since its launch in December last year has been in a way that none of the social media platforms that have come before it have been. So if we think about ChatGPT, it took them 5 days to get to 1 million users and another 2 months to get to 100 million users. 2.5 months was what Instagram took to even get 1 million users. And then they only got 100 million in 2 years and 6 months. And that is the closest competitor to ChatGPT in the market for social media right now. So that just goes to show how quickly we are adopting these technologies and how this next internet that is a lot more intelligent is something that people want to have. So apart from ChatGPT, which is a form of generative AI, and that is a text generative AI, there are other forms of generative AI that can generate different kinds of things. You can use text prompts in order to generate images, audios, videos, codes, or 3D. So I'm sure not all of us can be the best photographers, musicians, videographers, coders, or even 3D modelers. But what generative AI does is that it's able to close that gap in ability such that anyone who has a prompt of something that they want to have or create can create it very easily, just like how ChatGPT can. So apart from text, I'm next going to show a video of how image generation models and video generation models are able to use text prompts to create very quickly, very creative outputs.
Image generation models have taken the world by storm. It's now possible for anyone to turn their ideas into images using nothing but words. The explosion of creativity these models unleashed was years in the making. In 2021, Runway introduced latent diffusion, an AI system that was able to generate realistic images using an improved image generation technique. And in 2022, Stable Diffusion, a further improved version of latent diffusion that caused a tidal wave of creativity and mass adoption of the technology. Today, Runway is excited to introduce the next step forward in generative AI, Gen 1, a video generation AI system that can efficiently generate video in any style, all while retaining quality and flexibility. Gen 1 is able to realistically and consistently apply the composition and style of an image or text prompt to the target video, allowing you to generate new video content using an existing video. We call this approach video to video, and we're incredibly excited to share a few early use cases.
What has been presented in this video.
Stylization mode. Transfer the style of any image or prompt to every frame of your video.
Latent diffusion to stable diffusion
Storyboard
to be able to
turn mock-ups into fully stylized and animated renders.
An artist many
Mask
hours,
mode.
days, or months
Isolate subjects in your video and modify them with simple text prompts.
Video generation models
Render
such
mode.
that you can
Turn untextured renders into realistic outputs by applying an input image or prompt. And customization mode. Unleash the full power of Gen 1.
That's just Runway ML. So the next one I will be showing, it's about Microsoft 365 Copilot. So for many of us on this call, who I believe are probably professionals who have to use Outlook, Excel, PowerPoint all the time, what Microsoft 365 is going to do, which is going to be released by end of the year, is that it's going to incorporate all these different tools that we already use and add an AI component to it. So you could be writing an email about a press release you're doing, and you can very quickly, using one sentence, get PowerPoint to create a deck of that press release. And that's just the beginning of what AI can begin to do in order to improve productivity and creativity. So next, I'll be doing a short poll, and I think we can pull up the poll now. So what I'm showing you right now, there are two K-pop groups on the screen, And what you would have to poll for is who you think the AI humans are. So either pink or blue. Okay. Can we see the poll results now? Okay, so this is about a 50-50. So about 14 of you say that the left side are the AI humans, and about 11 say that the right are the AI humans. So it's about a 50-50 poll, and that is quite consistent. We have done this with many audiences, and that is exactly the same result we get. So the right answer is actually the one on the left. So that is the AI K-pop group Eternity. So everyone you see on this screen, they are actually AI-generated human beings. You won't find them anywhere in real life, but the question is whether that even matters at all. So Eternity is an AI K-pop group, and they are actually the world's first 100% AI virtual K-pop group. And their videos have millions of views on YouTube. And you know, with AI virtual humans, you can actually generate faces or expressions that are catered to certain audiences. It takes less time to train an AI human to be able to dance like a K-pop star. An AI human usually has fewer scandals because they can't create any scandals. And it overcomes certain physical limitations, such as how current K-pop idols might feel stressed or pressurized to perform in a certain way. And this digital human and avatar market is a $530 billion market. And this is just the start of what virtual humans can look like. And many companies are actually looking into how virtual humans can actually be used in their advertising strategies right now. So that's virtual AI generated human. So next thing I'm going to cover would be what the next immersive and instantaneous internet looks like. So this is what people most commonly refer to as the metaverse. And very quickly, I'm just going to show how the Apple Vision Pro, which is going to be released in January next year, looks like. And I think many people have a preconception of what virtual reality is with chunky headsets, but Apple has created a vision of what that headset could look like in about 6 months' time. And it looks very different from what many people have imagined it would look like.
Introducing Apple Vision Pro. The era of spatial computing is here. When you put on Apple Vision Pro, you see your world and everything in it. Your favorite apps live right in front of you, but now they're in your space. This is Vision OS, Apple's first ever spatial operating system. It's familiar, yet groundbreaking. You navigate with your eyes. Simply tap to select, flick to scroll, and use your voice to dictate. It's like magic. Apps have dimension, react to light, and cast shadows. Even though these spatial experiences...
Yeah, so this is what Apple's vision of the next VR headset would look like. And that's coming out in January next year. And from now till January, Meta, which is Facebook, is actually releasing their Quest 3, which would be in the fall of this year. And which means that the headset or the hardware side of things for virtual reality and the metaverse is about to get a major upgrade from what it looks like right now. So with such an upgrade, the question is, what would the metaverse look like? And there are 3 types of metaverse that we usually look at when we think about the metaverse. So it's not just limited to VR headsets, and we'll see that across these 3 pillars. So the first one that I will cover is a consumer metaverse, looking at how immersive experiences like what you saw with the Apple Vision Pro can actually create hybrid virtual and physical experiences that bring together different worlds and experiences. So the first one I'm going to show is Travis Scott and Fortnite. So Travis Scott is an American rapper and Fortnite is a metaverse platform. And this is what Travis Scott's concert looked like in Fortnite.
Sun is down, I'm freezing cold. That's how we already know. When it's here, my dog will probably do it for Louis Bell. That's just all he know, he don't know nothing else. I tried to show him. Yeah. Gone on you with the pick and roll. Young the flame, he in sicko mode.
So what you just saw was Travis Scott's first concert in Fortnite. So that concert that you saw, there were many avatars there and they were all live viewers. So there were 12 million people in that concert venue. And actually the largest concert venue in the world can fit at most 800,000 people right now. So through this concert, he actually grossed 20 million in one night. And for his in-person live shows, the highest that he ever drew in one night was 1.7 million. So that goes to show how this immersive worlds like Fortnite are actually attracting a large audience. Fortnite had 80 million monthly active users in 2022. And many big investors are actually looking into investing into Fortnite, like Sony. So concerts like this actually show the reach of how metaverse platforms like that would be part of our future. And if you think about how at the end of that video, Travis Scott was jumping into that space and how he was larger than life, you're actually creating experiences that transcend certain physical limitations. You can't have a larger than life Travis Scott appear in real life, but you can actually create a lot more entertainment components when you think about how experiences look like in the metaverse. And that is just the start of what consumer experiences could be, because apart from the fact that the experiences look different, a whole generation are using these platforms right now. And that is a way that people can start exploring what sort of experiences you might want to create when you want to target a certain demographic. So the second type of metaverse we'll look at is the industrial metaverse. So I think many people have heard of the term digital twins, and that is a big part of industrial metaverse, but associate digital twins with the metaverse, even though it is actually quite related. So the next thing I'm going to show is the BMW iFactory, which was the plant Lydia built in China.
Digitalization is a central enabler of the transformation. As we are setting new standards in digital production based on data science, artificial intelligence, and virtualization. Data science enables us to monitor the quality output, energy consumption, and maintenance status of our robots, all in real time. With data analytics and artificial intelligence, we are even capable of preventing issues before they happen. More than 100 AI applications are used at our Shenyang plants for object identification, process automation, and to ensure perfect quality surfaces. Virtualization means the merging of real and virtual worlds. Here, our experts and partners.
So this is Plant Lydia, which is built in Shenyang, China, and it was actually it's actually BMW's largest investment in China at 15 billion renminbi. And they're actually fully planned and simulated in the virtual from the start. So it wasn't like they built a physical plant and then built a virtual digital twin after that. So it was all built from the start. And because of that, Plant Lydia was actually able to be built with a 6-month shorter construction time than otherwise, even in COVID, because of that virtual world and real world collaboration. And secondly, it's a data-driven plan where everything in there is IoT, such as the people, the process, and also the different parts, meaning that at any point in time, from the digital twin, they can see how people are moving in that space, what is the most optimal way for people to move. And when you combine that IoT component with AI, it means that they are able to predict how much a certain machine is being used, when the machine is likely to fail, and they are able to do predictive maintenance, meaning that you can start maintaining the machine even before it breaks down. So that's just a start of what digital twins can do for certain factory operations. Lastly, we talk about the enterprise metaverse, which is about how employees work and learn at the moment. So JoinXR is actually a tool that allows builders such as architects, those in the construction industry, to come together in mixed reality in order to collaborate between different geographies.
We're both physically in the same room, but we don't have to be, right? We could work in a hybrid setting.
Indeed. In fact, let's invite Rob to come in from Brighton and join us with his avatar. Hey, Rob.
Hey guys, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you again. So we're taking a look at the building, and you can see we've got a couple of issues flagged on the water system there.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at the data in some more detail.
Okay, let's call up some of the data.
So everyone you see in this video, they're actually wearing the Microsoft HoloLens, which is an augmented reality device. And through the HoloLens, you're actually able to see the digital model in front of you alongside the real life surroundings. So it doesn't completely encapsulate you in a headset. And with that, they can also pull up data, pull up different people from different geographies to be able to discuss a 3D object and how a building can be built differently or more sustainably. So JoinXR is actually currently used in Singapore for collaborative city planning on a national level, which is the first of such use cases globally. With tools like augmented reality, which is a part of the metaverse, people can collaborate across borders on physical models. You can create renders of certain objects. You are able to reduce the number of site visits that you have to a certain location, and you can actually make the pre-construction planning process really efficient. So that's just the start of what enterprise metaverses would look like, and only for the infrastructure market. But if you extrapolate this to larger MNCs or businesses that are out there, it can be done for any kind of collaboration to bring people across borders together to collaborate very differently other than a Zoom call like we have today. So what we are seeing is that the next internet is actually $1 trillion opportunity in Asia, and we covered that in our Metaverse in Asia report, which you can scan with the QR code. So what we do in this report is that we cover about 10 to 12 Asian economies, and what the GDP contribution of it would be by 2035. And in each economy, we highlight what are the key sectors to look out for, and how the economy is moving towards a metaverse of the future in their own specific direction. So one reason why I say that the metaverse is going to be $1 trillion economy in Asia is because people commonly think about things like the metaverse in terms of what is happening in the West. But what we are seeing is that Asia is a really exciting region for a lot of developments, pushing us towards the metaverse and the next internet. So for example, Singapore and India are really setting up regulatory guardrails for emerging technologies like the metaverse, crypto, Web3. The global crypto adoption across the board is actually taken by Asian economies like Vietnam, India, Pakistan. 75% of integrated circuits, which are the hardware required to power your VR headset, AR headsets, are actually produced in this region. We have the largest mobile player base in the world here in Asia, and 60% of the world's youth live here. And the youth are going to be the first to adopt technologies like what I've shown earlier, because they are already on platforms like early metaverse platforms of Fortnite, Roblox. And those youth are actually going to be the ones that adopt metaverse technologies a lot faster when they mature, because they have already tried on those technologies when they're younger and have that familiarity. So that's just a start of why the metaverse is going to be a key part of how Asia develops and how Asia is going to contribute to that. And throughout today, I've shown different parts of AI like ChatGPT, Runway ML, Microsoft Copilot, Eternity, and from the metaverse side, 3 different types of consumer, enterprise, and industrial metaverse. So something that we've been thinking about at Center for the Edge is that amidst all these developments, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean for us to be living alongside other virtual humans, to be able to meet other humans in virtual worlds, to be able to attend concerts in virtual worlds? What would it mean for us as human beings in a future like that? So what we did was to actually publish, we published a paper recently, a thought piece for visionary businesses, society, regulators to think about what being human in a digital world looks like. So you can scan this QR code to access the report. And what we have done in this paper is to narrow down some of the key tensions that society, businesses, and regulators would start facing as we develop into the next internet. And secondly, also, what does it mean to be human? And we think that being human means that we are dreamers, we want to create, we are storytellers because we need to be able to make sense of the world around us. We are social and moral beings because we live socially, communally, and we are physical beings. We still have our physical bodies, even as we move into the virtual world, and we still live in physical worlds. I'm sure Warren would cover a bit about with climate change tech later. And with all of this, we actually frame some key questions of how we need to start thinking about the next internet to shape a future that we want to shape that is more human rather than technology-centric. So with that, we think that the future is actually already here. When people think about futurists, they think that we have a crystal ball to think about what the future looks like. But no, the future is already here today. We are seeing glimpses of it. And the question is, what would you do? So that's all from me. And you can scan the QR code for my LinkedIn if you want to continue for the conversations. And we can take questions now as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. That was very, very insightful, from generative AI all the way to consumer, industrial, and enterprise metaverse, as well as the reports that Deloitte Center for the Edge has actually generated. I believe there were 2 QR codes to be scanned, but due to the interest of time, you might not have been able to scan that, but do not worry, because this webinar is recorded for good reason. So you can actually revisit the YouTube link by just searching IMDA Pixel on YouTube later on to actually just go and take a look at some key points, and as well as scan the QR code reports that Deloitte has prepared for you as well. So thanks again, Michelle, for your time. And of course, we are taking any questions right now via the Zoom Q&A. So feel free to highlight any questions over there. So to start the ball rolling, actually, Michelle, I might have something for you over here. I was just wondering throughout your presentation that there might be existing concerns about AI cannibalizing the work of existing industries, such as, for example, the arts industry, when Midjourney can generate, for example, a very, very beautiful portrait of, let's say, a Renaissance with different themes and all that, whichever inputs that people put in. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question that we've been thinking about as well. And I think what is going to happen to artists when generative AI can do a lot of the photo video editing is that, firstly, artists would have to be able to learn how to work alongside generative AI. So to think of generative AI as something that supplements your work rather than replaces whatever you do. So that just means that you get to upskill, right? Rather than spending time coming up with certain conceptualizations. For example, if you're an artist and you were conceptualizing a certain piece of work, you could start by going to ChatGPT, think about some of the ideas, bounce certain ideas, and then go to other tools like DALL-E or Midjourney in order to generate certain beginning prototypes. But I think for those of us who use generative AI daily, what you're seeing is that generative AI gives you a really good first pass. It gives you a good first draft, but what the role of the human is still really important in order to see what is good, to be able to judge what good art looks like, and to process further whatever is already generated from the start. And also, just to add on, there is a US artist called Sean Abert. So he actually got a stroke about a year ago. And what he's done since, because he's no longer able to do hand-drawn paintings, what he's done is to start expressing his creativity in different ways, such as using Gen AI to refine what certain images look like, and to generate pieces of art. through that tool rather than using hand drawings as he used to be able to. So if we think about how Gen AI is able to guide us towards a more human-centric world, that is one model for what it looks like, right? Because it puts at the center of it, which is that humans want to create, and it thinks about how Gen AI serves as a tool to move us towards that world. Yeah.
Right, definitely. I think that's definitely a very good point on that, and it does enable a certain group of people to leverage on that when they might have lost certain physiological aspects of their life. They are still be able to create as well. So there's a question from Desmond actually on any guidance on the copyright issues related to generative AI.
Yeah. So that is actually something that I think a lot of IP lawyers are trying to figure out right now, because generative AI, for example, tools like DALL-E, Midjourney, how they are able to create these images is that they take images from all over the internet, and that serves as training data for them to generate something that's completely new. So in terms of who owns the image, currently people usually credit it as, image generated by DALL-E. But if we think about how art has been created over history, people have always started by copying. All artists start by learning from other artists and how they create before they find their own style. So if you think about how generative AI tools look like in that frame, you are not actually copying anyone's piece of art. What you are doing is to learn from a certain set of historical data and to create something new. Although eventually, what we have found that to be really important is that the prompt generator, the person creating the prompts to create art, actually plays a really big role in the creative process. So it means that the creative process is shifted, right? It's no longer the person who paints something. It's about the person who comes up with the concept for it and has an image or an idea or vision for what a piece of work looks like. So I think broadly for the copyright issues, it looks like we would still be able to create things from AI generated tools, but to be able to credit it as coming from those tools at the moment. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much. And indeed, Michelle is very qualified to speak on the topic by being one of the leading IP strategists as well. So there's another question from one of our attendees, which is truly interesting. Any opinion with regards to using generative AI as criminal acts that could harm the society?
Yeah, so I think that's something that a lot of people are concerned about, with whether, how people are going to use Gen AI, they use it for good, bad. When ChatGPT first came out, everyone went on it and tried to get it to do as bad, like tons of bad things, How do you commit certain crimes? Like they would try and test the limits of that. But I think how we can think about Gen AI is that it's a tool at the end of the day. And people are going to always find ways to misuse or to find roundabout ways to use a tool for their own benefit. So I think for many big companies like OpenAI, Facebook, Meta, they're currently looking at how they can actually put in the right regulations in order to safeguard the use of these tools. But I think what we can expect is that people are always going to find loopholes. It's more a matter with how people are using the tools rather than what the tools themselves have to offer, because tools are neutral. And what's important for us is to figure out what's the right way to use those tools. And for the Center for the Age, our view of it is that the tools are supposed to be used in a way that is human-centric, and we need to start getting regulators to think about how to guide people to use those tools. And we cover that in our paper.
Right. Thank you very much, Michelle. Yeah, just like how dynamite was invented to blast open mines, right?
Yeah.
But you could potentially use that for terrorism as well, which is
exactly.
The bottom line would be the morality and the ethics and how education is carried out on that front. So we thank Michelle for your time. Truly, thank you for sharing that vast amount of insights. I think there is a lot more that you can benefit from connecting with Michelle, and at the same time to go through the video again or to connect with Michelle to get the papers themselves to have a more thorough read yourself. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And of course, I think with the presentation by Michelle, a lot of people are also trying to delve into connecting how the metaverse and the physical world can connect. And for that, we do actually have a very, very qualified speaker who is the co-founder and CEO of Actually. They're actually adept at creating digital experiences, linking the metaverse and physical reality. I have seen some of their works as well online, as well as some of the video features where they actually integrate payment gateway in the metaverse environment. And today, it's actually a very interesting topic brought to you by Warren, which is how the metaverse can actually help to reverse climate change. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand the time over to our next speaker, co-founder and CEO at Actually, Mr. Warren Woon. Warren, please.
Thanks, Jing Hong. Yeah, my name is Warren Woon, co-founder and CEO of Actuality. I'm going to share my slide right now. All right, thank you for everyone coming here. So Actuality is an immersive technology company building towards spatial computing that is helping to reverse climate change by pioneering the future of urban lifestyle. So let's start with definition of the metaverse, because from my experience, there are a lot of different thoughts about this. At least for us at Actuality, metaverse is the seamless convergence of physical and digital worlds that people can access. So the key so-called idea here is that it's a combination of both physical and digital, or what we call virtual. And we believe it is the next stage of this new human-machine interface that eventually harnesses Web3 and beyond. Okay, so to us, it's that visualization layer, not just a game, so to speak. And with Web3, we're talking about blockchain, AI, as Michelle had covered, VR, AR, spatial computing, again, made possible by, or rather going to be made popular by Apple with Vision Pro, as well as edge computing, okay? So something that we have been trying to so-called convey in our message, why we're doing all these things and why the metaverse is not just simply a game, and how it has the ability to affect or help with climate change. And I'm not too sure if people are aware of this, but this is based on historical data from late 1800s all the way until now. This is on NASA's website. I'm going to play this video for you and you can take a look. So essentially, temperatures have risen over the last, about 0.13 Celsius per decade over the last 50 years. And it has been twice as fast as the previous 50 years before that, okay? And we're expecting it to rise by another 1.5 Celsius by 2050. I mean, I grew up in Singapore and never remembered it being so hot. And, we've seen temperatures in Europe going up to as high as 48, 49 degrees in Sicily recently. And now my friends in Africa, they're complaining about temperatures and humidity being so high that they don't even, go outside the house, right? So literally the world is burning right before our eyes. So we wanted as a company to do something about it, but using the technology that we are building, okay? So something else that is also related to the temperature going up is the amount of emissions filling up our environment. And I'm going to play this video for you. So this is actually what we call seasonal, but every season throughout the year, more and more emissions, greenhouse gases are being trapped in the atmosphere, and we see temperatures going up as a result. Okay, so you see where these emissions are coming from. So normally during summer is when the emissions sort of clear up, all right, but not to the full extent. Okay, and then during the cold season is when the emissions start accumulating. All right, so this is a 1 year period where you see how the emissions behave in the atmosphere. Okay. And with emissions, we also look at the contributions in terms of which industry it is coming from. And mind you, a lot of this is because of the rapid population growth driven by urbanization. And because of the population growth, we also had to industrialize agriculture. And oftentimes, the countries that produce a lot of our food, they're focusing on very few crops. And as a result, they're not necessarily producing for their own consumption. They're producing for trading and export. And oftentimes, they're items that perish because of storage or transportation, or sometimes there just is either overproduction or there's a lack of demand, and then things get either slaughtered or just thrown away, so to speak. So right off the top, in terms of our agricultural output, 30% is contributed to such wastage. Okay. And the fact that we're very now grown used to a consumption culture, in terms of retail consumption, in terms of something breaks, we just buy something else to replace it instead of trying our best to keep it or repair it, right? So this consumption culture has led to a lot of this emissions that have been generated. And then also the supporting logistics infrastructure that need to support the massive trade because of our consumption habits. So looking at this diagram over here, immediately you see agriculture, deforestation to support the urbanization, the transportation, logistics easily account for more than half of the emissions. And because of all that massive globalization, and we have to so-called deforest, right? We have to remove a lot of the natural landscape. And as a result, topsoil is being destroyed. So topsoil is important because it contains organisms that fauna and flora need to thrive in order to thrive. And topsoil, when you take a handful of topsoil, it contains more microorganisms than there are humans on the planet. Okay, and it takes a long time when destroyed for topsoil to be repaired. And topsoil is responsible for 95% of our food production, and literally half has disappeared in the last 150 years. So it's also affecting, the quality of the food that we eat, and has led to, certain lack of nutrition. And one thing positive about technology in general is that it is leading to so-called a lowering of consumption. Okay, so digitalization essentially is decarbonization, and from this chart you can see the amount of emissions over the years from the tech industry. Okay, so we want to address how certain traditional industries and the framework is unsustainable. For example, the massive logistical transport infrastructure that we have. So we want to start steering, global economy towards more of a digital type of economy. And I believe that's where the metaverse can become very helpful, because it is the convergence of both the physical and digital worlds. Okay. And one thing about technology is that there's also a debate in terms of the how things like data centers are consuming a lot of energy, and we're having to build more and more data centers because of the data that we're accumulating, the systems that we're integrating. So there is that risk, and I think those who are in the tech industry will realize that the current framework of how we connect to systems and databases, I think is due for an overhaul. And I think this is a conversation that most people, or rather mainstream media, doesn't talk about, or most people don't realize. And we need to possibly have this technological revolution beyond what Web3 is capable of doing before digitalization results in recarbonization. And I put this picture right here. I'm not too sure if you are familiar with the old telephone switchboard operators and how they work. So literally the way we are using APIs right now, how we are connecting from one system to the next, or how databases are being connected, is literally like providing this link, from via API. So every time we build something like a new app and we want to integrate to payment gateways, this is where APIs come in. And then the new app generates new databases, and then how the business that has the app needs to connect that database with existing databases. So it causes more and more friction. So the bigger tech ecosystem, current tech ecosystem becomes, the more friction it creates, and the more friction it creates, the more resources it will consume in terms of time, energy, and other resources, manpower as well. Okay. All right. So there's a study done recently, or rather published recently, by Cornell, by these two PhDs. By 2050, the metaverse could potentially lower emissions by 10 gigatons. So how much is 10 gigatons? It's approximately equivalent to about 100,000 full-sized carriers. That's how much it is. And we can lower CO2 by 4 ppm, okay? And potentially reduce effective radiative forcing by 0.035 watts per square meter, and also lower total US energy consumption by 92 exajoules. So what all these numbers mean? So for example, US is the second largest energy consumer in the world, and they are consuming they consume approximately 90 exajoules a year, okay? China is the world's largest consumer of electricity, using over 5.9 trillion kilowatt hour, which is equivalent to 214 exajoules of energy annually. So that is about 2.5 times what US consumes. And China now accounts for almost 1/4 of global energy consumption. So we're talking about massive energy being consumed currently. And some of these numbers are based on so-called what we know of existing technology and what are some of the potential implementations within the next 5 to 10 years, right? And also the devices that go along with it. So there's probably some limitations in the research done by this two PhDs, but what we're trying to show here is that metaverse could change the way we interact with the physical world. With virtual components that we can introduce, as Michelle had rightly pointed out, in terms of the industrial metaverse, the enterprise metaverse, where we can collaborate remotely without meeting in person. So sometimes that actually reduces the need for so-called travel and the use of transportation like your airplanes, all right? And also, in the case of the Plant Layer by BMW, by doing things virtually, doing inspections, but using, backing it up with real data, we can do a lot of things without moving. And sometimes if we can so-called anticipate problems that can happen and we fix it right away, it reduces the need to spend resources on fixing the actual problem itself when it emerges. So a lot of these behaviors we're still currently studying in terms of scientists studying it. And we could potentially see more and more benefits being generated as a result of greater implementation of the metaverse. Okay, so after doing all of our research, right, and also building what we have built so far, we actually have been all this while planning to build towards a future smart city, that we have envisioned. And our future smart city is quite different from how it is currently, in the sense that this future smart city, and thanks to COVID, actually, this future smart city is meant to be built away from traditional overcrowded city centers, but also with urban high-tech food and farming at its core, okay? And because we're moving away from having to be in a physical space to work, we are able now to work remotely, doing things virtually. So really, we don't have to move to traditional city centers to find good jobs any longer, okay? So that means we can start looking at building, new cities away from traditional city centers. Jakarta, Indonesia being a prime example, and we're seeing certain aspects of that happening in Philippines, okay? So with this, we are essentially creating this circular and sustainable city model with potentially smaller carbon footprint and reduced consumption. And why this urban farming is important is because currently most farming is concentrated in very rural areas, in places that most city folks won't even see, okay? And they produce often for trading and export. And then just to get those produce ready for export is the internal infrastructure needed for the logistics and transportation. And then this doesn't include even the transportation going out of the country or the city, okay? So what we're trying to do here is reimagining how farming should be, how agriculture should be, and perhaps instead of producing, trading, and exporting of these agricultural output products, is to think about trading and licensing of farming data. So if you, for example, like my dragon fruit, my variety of dragon fruit, instead of asking me to buy from me and I'll export it out to you, is you can license my technology. I trade this data with you, and I take a cut of everything that you sell. So that's like a new paradigm in terms of how a smart city alongside future food and farming should be. All right. So pioneering future urban lifestyle is something that we are trying to pursue. And every step of the way, when we built our immersive technology platform, including the metaverse, was always to create this linkage from virtual back to the physical. And these are some of the ways that the metaverse can be used in terms of creating this future urban lifestyle and how it can benefit our environment. So, for example, creating virtual test beds for climate solutions, doing a lot of these testing and simulations online, and AI is actually something very important towards this process. Okay, and then we are also looking at potentially relying less on actual physical limited resources and the use of space. So one example that is now becoming more and more common is like, for example, furniture shops, right? Normally, furniture stores are very big. You have a lot of resources needed in the showroom, and they rely on people coming into the showroom to touch and feel and whatnot. So more and more now, furniture shops are looking at using VR and AR to create this virtual showroom so the customer doesn't have to come down, all right? So which means there's no need to have a large space packed with different types of furniture, which sometimes may not sell and leading to, a waste of resources, okay? Using the metaverse to drive ESG awareness among businesses and consumers. So to those who are not familiar with what a liquid tree system is, it literally is a device that is quite big. It's the size of like an industrial generator. So it's about about 200 kilograms, give or take, and it is usually about this height of about 2.5 meters, 2 meters wide. And then about 1.5 meters deep, okay? And within it are funnels of water and microalgae. And what it does, it sucks air from the environment and puts out oxygen, okay? So what we're doing at Actuality is connecting to such system, we call them green tech, to help businesses and consumers both become more aware of their carbon footprint. But in the process, we're adding other IoT devices, including digital cameras, so that we can start understanding how such green tech systems actually positively or negatively affect the environment and how the different systems interact or so-called affect one another, right? So we're looking at using the metaverse, just like how BMW is doing with Planet Lydia, to better understand how the overall system behaves within that space, okay? And we're using metaverse to visualize. And hopefully through that process, we can educate stakeholders, including consumers, right, to better accurately track and also to help formulate future green policies. So I'm not too sure if you guys are aware, if you go to the SP Power, the utility app, for example, they have actually gamified the so-called energy savings process for the consumer. And they actually purchased in advance fractionalized renewable energy certificates, and they gamify and award these fractionalized RECs to those with the best energy savings. So we're looking at now, utility companies like SP trying to gamify the process to encourage people to be more aware of the carbon footprint. And we're seeing more initiatives like this in different countries and cities as well. Okay. So with the next bit, it might sound frivolous, but looking at the demographic at large, the global population, and again, bring up something that Michelle mentioned, it's not just that the Asian region has a young demographic, but overall, 60% of the global population is actually under 40 years old. So you're talking about people, a large consumer demographic that actually grew up with mobile devices and the internet. That's all they know. And as a result, the process, they're very familiar with game platforms and gamification. And one of the things, a very common behavior, and I think for those who are parents with kids that frequent Roblox and Fortnite and whatnot, you're probably paying a lot of credit card bills with your kids buying accessories and skins, so to speak, and weapons and whatnot for their game characters. Okay, so potentially this is something that is quite revolutionary. At Actuality, we're also now working towards a upcoming Web3 event where we're working with a fashion designer to bring his actual creations into the virtual space and using that to create awareness in terms of some of the sustainability initiatives that he is pushing. And one way, one of the ideas that he has is to use the metaverse as a way to help prototype his new creations, get his so-called fan base as well as potentially new customers to give him ideas in terms of what he can create before he actually puts out a new so-called evening gown, for example. Okay, and then this important bit, see the invisible. So what that means is oftentimes in the past, right, with traditional technology, before there was Plant Lydia by BMW, a lot of these so-called inspections had to be physical. And sometimes you're talking about an inspection team coming from a completely different country. And because of that, it consumes a lot of resources, for example, transportation, that is the obvious one. And so it becomes very reliant on this physical element to do inspections. So with what BMW has shown is that a lot of these inspections and analysis of systems, including pipings and tech systems and machines and whatnot, you can actually start visualizing all that data in the virtual space so that you can understand where potential problems are happening and then address them before it actually happens. So you are seeing the invisible here. And at the same time, it allows this new way of visualizing data that weren't possible previously. As I mentioned, remote collaboration and how one system affects another. So for example, I shared with you that, hey, this liquidity system actually sucks in air, but how do I know it's actually sucking that much air? So by combining it with other or integrating it with other technologies and visualizing it in metaverse, I can actually see the actual input output of that device, okay, and how it's actually making the environment better. And because we can now see the invisible, perhaps then we can look at better utilization of resources, okay, by doing certain things like remote troubleshooting, remote prototyping, and whatnot, okay? So because there is that visibility now, then we don't have to put in that much so-called guesswork, all right? And we can then look at more targeted implementation and perhaps less consumption resources. So the reason, because we are potentially now able to give very curated, very targeted recommendation. So one example is technology that we're going to be rolling out that has the ability to then separate the identity from the persona. And we're using it in the metaverse as well as in real life. So by having a more so-called targeted understanding of a consumer's persona, we can better recommend products, services, experiences to that consumer's persona. And because there is that targeted consumption, targeted buying or usage of services, the consumer doesn't have to go about buying things, returning things, and so on and so forth, right? Everything is very curated just for that single consumer, okay? So one last bit about this urban lifestyle is that we're looking at, across from what Michelle mentioned again, the consumer, industrial, enterprise space, right? To replace what used to be physical equivalent activities. So instead of going to office to work, we can work remotely. Instead of getting all the different teams from different cities to come down to do a prototype, everything can be done remotely. Okay, just like how the example of Join XR with the architects and the engineers. All right, so this is something very important and near and dear to us. So we came up with our immersive tech platform, and we wanted to find use cases to implement. And we instead of trying to so-called look for clients, we actually embarked on this approach in terms of identifying the most difficult industry, but the most impactful to build for. So alongside with our food and farming partner, Food Starter, we created metafarms, okay? Because we want to bring a new paradigm to agriculture, to food and farming. And interestingly, and also luckily that we're in Southeast Asia with a lot of need for transformation in agriculture, we are building these meta farms in different stages. And then the first phase of meta farms towards building this future agriculture is to help elevate farmers' livelihoods and access to services and financing. So in countries like Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, agriculture is inversely related to poverty rates. So if I'm President Marcos, President Jokowi, if I want to fulfill my promise to bring my country's income, GDP per capita, to middle income status, then I have to address agriculture. And in the case of Philippines, for example, they have a very unique problem, something that they share with Singapore. Singapore, because of its limited size, we don't have much agricultural output. So we are essentially a net importer. But did you know that in Philippines, they're also a net importer? It's a population of about almost 120 million people. They have millions of farmland, but yet they're importing agricultural products. The reason being more and more young people are leaving agriculture. So there's, although millions of farmland, but not all of them are being farmed. Okay, so we are trying to elevate farmers' livelihoods by providing them with additional access to capital. So we are using elements of blockchain, right, to fractionalize their farms, to outreach to so-called smaller investors, so to speak, so that they can take up these farming contracts, but at a smaller value, right? So it's more palatable, and we're opening the access to more people. And then on the educational side, we're using metaverse and Web3 to put together a gameplay, but connected to the farm's real data and the actions that are required for farming, to then teach the young about the fun or the realities of food and farming, but in a very educational way. So similar to Farmville, but educational. So the whole point is to help create more awareness among the young by making it fun. And the next phase of this meta farms is that we're putting the power of farming to the hands of every consumer by offering NFTs through our marketplace, so that when NFTs are purchased, when an NFT is purchased, the farmer actually gets a module complete with your fertilizer, your feed, your seeds, and manpower and whatnot to plant a certain size of farmland. But come complete with that module, IoT sensors and devices, so that we can start collecting data about the crop or the livestock, so that over time we can understand what are the different optimal data sets for growing different things. So eventually that optimal data sets could be replicated within an urban high-tech farm, okay? And then the phase after that will be eventually trading that data, so that another city in a different faraway place, a different place, can actually license that data and replicate that farming process in their own city within an urban high-tech environment, okay? So this is how we believe a new paradigm in terms of trading and licensing data can be created. And we are helping to future-proof an entire industry. And what I mean by that is a good case example in Indonesia is that a lot of the young kids are going into factory jobs rather than farming. So they're leaving their parents and whatnot, but they're going to factory jobs because it's more comfortable. Farming is a hard life. So they're not necessarily going for better salary opportunities, but they're actually, shooting themselves in the foot in the sense that a lot of these factory jobs in the next 5 to 10 years will be replaced by robotics anyway. So we want to gradually move agriculture towards more a tech-driven industry. Okay, so at the end of the day, we would like to use the metaverse, as I mentioned, our definition of the metaverse with VR, AR, Web3 and whatnot, to reimagine social behaviors, right? So that we can help reverse climate change. And I'm not sure if you've been to Van Gogh, the experience recently. And one of these quotes, from Van Gogh that really struck me was, "Great things are done by a series of small things brought together." So at Actuality, we're doing every bit that we can as a young startup to build impactful technologies to really help towards driving a positive reversal in climate change. Right. So that's all I have to share. If you want to talk to me more, please feel free to outreach to me. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can scan this QR code that will lead to our website. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Warren. Thanks for the insightful sharing and citing the use cases as well as the possibilities. I especially love the bit on the modern farming and how they can actually get themselves involved in something so archaic yet so necessary, but at the same time they can do it smarter by doing in a smaller scale and a more efficient scale with the help of the metaverse. I think that's something that many of us in this conversation would not have imagined, in fact. So there are a couple of questions actually. Mainly they are asking about the impact. They're actually questioning the impact of using the metaverse instead to create like smart future cities, as well as the possible computational devices and mobile devices. So let me just cite the two questions. I suppose you could take them together actually. So one of the questions come by in the form of how damaging are the battery and chip technologies needed by computational and mobile devices, and the second being, wouldn't creating new cities also require the use of concrete, which also contributes to CO2 emissions, versus, let's say, repurposing existing cities that are currently and globally facing an empty office crisis?
Yeah. So very good questions, and there's always that debate, right? So addressing the battery issue. So I personally do not believe lithium at its current state is efficient, because all the studies have shown to transform the electric grid to sustain the charging of, say, the number of vehicles in a certain city is many times more than what the entire city currently consumes. So I do not believe the EV cars at the current state is the way to go. So yeah, and not to mention the carbon footprint that you're leaving to mine the very limited resource that is lithium. And we do not want to enter a world where competing superpowers end up starting wars to claim such resources. So that is the last thing we want to see, okay? And as for the new cities, I mean, new buildings are created every day. And yes, certain actions will lead to so-called the contribution of carbon, but there are also other actions that lead to a deduction in carbon. So we need to look at the ecosystem overall in terms of the sequestration or sequestering of carbon on land and also in the water. All right. So so all the carbon emissions, they have to eventually be absorbed by land and sea or ocean, right? So if you don't have the so-called the flora and fauna to really absorb, then you're going to start seeing more and more emissions being captured by the atmosphere. So this is not to say that we won't be using traditional methods to build these new cities, but there are now technologies, even the creation of certain types of concrete mixture and the process that result in them are actually going to be much lower in carbon footprint than the current processes that we have. And even in Singapore, for example, we're experimenting now with the raw materials that we use to pave roads, for example. And the government is now experimenting with even plastics, using plastics to within the paving process to eventually help lower the heat that is produced by the roads, right? So yeah, so we're not going to be. I mean, I don't have the answer because I'm not an environmental expert.
For sure, yeah.
But all can I say is that over time, I think more and more people are trying to solve the problem of existing systems that contribute to heavy footprint. Yeah, but I still believe that having a new city where the entire design framework is geared towards a negative carbon footprint, I think that is the way to go, because the current city framework structure, everything that's like, for example, Bangkok, it's literally like 99% impossible to change Bangkok. So the only way to so-called change is to build a new city with a completely new framework, which is what in the case of Jakarta is doing.
Right. Thank you very much, Warren, for your inputs. And I believe we have time for one last and final question, which is pretty interesting as well. As a person who's starting or transiting their careers into the AI and metaverse fields, what would you suggest them to equip themselves with? What would you suggest them to prepare for?
Number one, your whatever knowledge you have is never a waste. And I think for those who are doing mid-career switches, bear in mind and treasure your existing knowledge, because we're trying to solve old world problems. So in order to solve something, you have to know what the problem is. To me, it doesn't matter if it's metaverse or AI or VR, AR or whatever. It is the use of data. So to me, data science is very important. And even within data science, I believe the educational framework is changing as well. So what used to be data, we think data is just numbers, but those numbers can mean many different things. And how data can be used towards visualization, for example, and how that numbers can be transformed into an image, right? Like what Michelle has shown in terms of the prompt engineering. So we need to understand how to properly use data, how to interpret, how to visualize them. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Warren. I think that is really, really a gem of a wisdom to preserve and in fact to collaborate between your existing field of expertise as well as using AI and metaverse as a tool so they can actually go hand in hand. Is that what we're hearing?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Warren. Thanks. And of course, if you'd like to connect with Warren, once again, you can search for Warren's name and actuality in the LinkedIn profile. And of course, to connect with them to possibly answer or discuss any further issues as well as challenges that you might face. Thank you very much, Warren. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chin Hong. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you once again to Michelle and Warren, both of our speakers. And of course, before ending the session today, I'm sorry we are a little bit behind schedule, but we do hope that you're gleaning some real and great insights from the presentation. So next up, we do actually have a short presentation from IMDA Pixel, and we do have Janice representing IMDA Pixel to share with you on IMDA's efforts towards innovation, be it grants, programs, and workshops and webinars like this, and how you can actually benefit from IMDA's resources and how IMDA can be part of your corporate and digital innovation transformation journey. So with that, let's welcome Janice. Hi, Janice.
Thanks, Sing Hong. So I know that we are overrunning quite a bit today, so I'll try to keep my section short. So today, today's webinar is actually brought to you by the IMDA Innovation team, and we have two kind of platforms for you to explore innovation with us and explore what's the latest technology. So we run a physical innovation hub at One North for those of you who are unaware. We also have a digital presence called the Open Innovation Platform. So this is where we help corporates to crowdsource for some of the best tech solutions out there. So I'll share a little bit more about both platforms. In terms of our innovation hub, I think you can think of it simply as ABC. One is really access to some of the facilities that we provide to our startups for solution development. So today when we talk about AR, VR, a lot of the devices keeps changing, getting updated. So this is a space where startups can get access to some of the latest equipment out there without having to invest too much in some of the headsets that you see from the various brands. The second part is really build. So how we help corporates to build up their business case, explore what AR, VR technologies can do for them. So we work with the consultants that you see here to help corporates think about what are some of the organizational challenges that they face and how digital technologies can help them. And the last part, C, is really about connecting with the community. So things like running webinars like today are platforms that we use to bring to you the latest information about new technologies, and also create a platform for everyone to really network and explore collaboration opportunities. Yeah, so earlier I talked about how we are helping corporates to build and how we're helping corporates and startups to build their products. I think we have support in 3 different manners. I think for corporates, perhaps design thinking, the middle column is more relevant to you guys, where we work on defining who your customers are and defining what your problem statement is. For startups, typically refining the UI UX of your product and trying to tell your brand story is more important. So this is where 1 and 3 comes in very handy for our startups. So if you want to find out more about how some of our consultancy panels can help you, do write to us and we'll see how we can support those projects. And over the last few years or so, we've built up quite a sizable community, I think both in the AR/VR space as well as in the AI space, and even expanding to other areas like robotics. So if you are keen to speak with any of our tech solvers, you have an idea in mind that you want to explore and you don't know maybe who out there can help you to bring it to life, do come to us and we can see how we can match you guys up as well. And yeah, I won't go too much into this, but do stay in touch with us to learn more about our webinars, as well as some of the workshops that we do on a monthly basis to provide new information to some of our corporates and startups. Last but not least, I spoke earlier about the digital platform that we run called the Open Innovation Platform. So this is where corporates come in with interesting challenges and problem statements, can be related to either how best can I engage my customers, how can I optimize some of my back-end processes, and they want to go out there and crowdsource for solutions. So this platform actually helps them to do that. And we are agnostic in the sense that we have worked with everyone from either your retail sector to manufacturing to financial services and even built environment. So I think regardless of which sector you come from, probably the challenges of customer engagement or process optimization is quite similar. So if you're keen to find out how OIP can help you to develop a new prototype or help you pilot new technologies in your organization, yeah, do come and speak to us about the OIP process as well. Yeah, so before I end off, I think we would also like to seek feedback from everyone on today's session. So I'll leave this here and I'll hand the time back over to Ting Hong.
Thank you very much, Janice. And of course, to leverage on the many possibilities that IMDA can give you is really, really a wise choice to go forward, whether you're looking at the hardware, the software, as well as the network that IMDA can provide you with. So do keep in touch via the mailing list. I think this is where you can glimpse the upcoming events and to prepare to sign up, as some are relatively closed door events, but we do have open events like this. So on and off, as you get connected with the community, you get more access to the resources and the possibilities, the grants, the programs, right? And we look forward to seeing you more at IMDA webinars as well as our physical events. So once again, we do warmly welcome you to just scan the QR code to give us a couple of honest feedback on how we can possibly do better or where we have really done well. Thank you so much for your time. And once again, this is the Value of Immersive Experiences Unveiled webinar brought to you by IMDA. Thank you so much for your time. Have a lovely week ahead. See you.